There we go.
Close enough? Yeah, I like it. Thank you guys for joining us. So for TCO, total cost of ownership, as it applies to immersion, I am Allison Boen. Next slide. Go to the next slide. I'm Allison Boen with a small company, Alcatex Data Center Design Services, 29 years old, pretty proud of that. I'm with my counterpart, Eddie Roytman, and he's with another small little company called Intel. So yeah.
That's right.
And we are really happy to be here. So why TCO for immersion from that perspective? Essentially, we're answering that question, aren't those tanks and fluid expensive? And that's what this was born out of, as Rolf had up on his presentation. The end user needs a clear perspective of TCO, but not coming from just one or two individuals. And so this is why we took the gauntlet, because we know from a CapEx infrastructure perspective, we can anticipate 30% savings minimum. We know from an OpEx perspective, 33%. So to deep dive an agnostic version of this, that's what was born here. So we're excited about our baby.
Yes. So let me give you a brief overview of our work stream. We're another young work stream. We started just in kind of end of January of this year. So this is kind of rough timeline of our progression. We are still on the roll. We're still producing some results and working on our first version of the TCO that we're hoping to release by end of the year. But we started with pretty much kicking off and getting contributions and getting participation from many. I would like to thank everyone who participates and would like to welcome additional participation. So we decided on the scope of the initial phase. We decided to what's going to be in, what's going to be out. We'll be talking more about it during the presentation. Then we opened window for contributions. Those contributions came in all kind of types and sorts. Whether it's just some input or maybe some point of view. There was a really nice. I would like to acknowledge, contribution kind of from Green Grid that essentially gave us, opened the reference to the glossary, and that reach, and Rolf talked about it earlier, it now becomes even bigger than just for this work stream, so that's a good work. And then cannot not mention, but in March of this year, Rolf contributed really a good and elaborate TCO tool, in fact, which was a really strong candidate for us to consider, and in fact we did choose that one. In addition to that, we had a lot of other contributions, like lots of inputs, lots of views. We pretty much decided on priority what's going to be in first version of the tool, and the purpose of the first version of the tool is just to get going, get something basics done, and then we will fancy it up later. So this is what we do. So let's talk a little bit about the details here. So apples and oranges, right? If you look at the TCO, thank you, Allison. So if you look at the TCO for, look at the air-cooled environment, look at immersed cool environment, complete apples and oranges. And these apples and oranges are pervasive throughout the data center, all the way from IT equipment to racks to infrastructure and facility. Just a few examples, right? If at IT equipment level, you have no fans. You have different form factors, you have different power levels, right? And so on. At the rack level, now it's maybe instead of vertical, it's a horizontal, right? Maybe it's a tank, there is some fluid out there. Power density will be different. Floor space consideration, there is no more, going into infrastructure, your cold aisle, hot aisle type, construction is not required anymore. right? So you need to bring a plumber along, because now you need a piping, deal with piping and valves and other things. So some people get the extra job to do. So yeah, different management approach because of the different materials that people deal with. Scale is different, and lots of different things. Facility as well, lots of considerations relate to climate, whether it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Greenfield versus brownfield deployment, like for instance, what we see is in the greenfield, we'll see much more savings potentially versus in the brownfield. It's something that we start to talk about, but we'll elaborate more into in a second version of the tool, things like that. All right. So for first version, I said we started. We're focusing on basics. We model the entire facility. We will model the TCO for both air and immersion. No cold plate yet. Something will be added later. We will definitely generate industry standard KPIs, and climate was mentioned. That's really, can make a difference between air and immersion in terms of the TCO, depending where you're located around the globe. So this is something that's, some basic climate, a couple of climate options, some extremes will be added there. A very important piece that I will mention later is the ability to fine-tune and override assumptions. So not to read the right side here, it's a eye chart, but just to give an idea how the tool looks like right now, just a brief view. I guess one important piece on the tool is that it can be used by beginners, intermediate, and expert people alike. That's very important. If you don't know anything about immersion, like me, for instance, like a few months ago, right? I'm learning as well. You can just punch in like 3 variables and it will spit out the result. Okay, so but what's important is all the underlying assumption, right? So if the underlying assumptions are preset and defaults are preset by experts who know what they're talking about, then I can use the tool. Right, and if let's say I'm getting a little bit more advanced, or maybe I'm, I understand certain area or more areas, I can go ahead and tweak and change some of those assumptions and see how they affect the result. So in fact, actually, really like the way it's Rolf organized this is we have essentially a bunch of variables. We have default values and values that you can override. So output is shown in the same way. Okay, so it's not just this page. There are other pages on this, but so elements that taken into account here are essentially energy, of course, right? Operational expenses and capital expenses, floor space that would be required in both cases, air and immersion. Cooling infrastructure related to liquids, the power and data infrastructure related to all non-liquid stuff, all the metal stuff and things like that, racks and tanks and some other things. So we're trying to make the tool, model the entire facility and pretty much give us the kind of modeling for both cases. So this is, like I said, it's like a black box view, like inputs, what does it do, outputs. In outputs, as you can see, it spits out quite a bit of information. There are financial aspects first, TCO, CapEx, OpEx. There are some floor plan stats on energy, KPIs, and so on. As you can see, there are 3 columns of output, air, immersion with defaults that baked into the tool, and immersion with if you choose to change certain parameters, right? So let's take a look. We still have some time. So let's take a look at under the hood. So it's done in Excel format. So it's not like a executable black box. People can take a look, and it's full transparency is there. So there are some case figures, inputs and outputs. There are some variables on the first page, but also there are some additional tabs. There is a tab with immersion specifications, energy analysis, floor space analysis, financials, and some other stuff. One thing I'd like to mention is that lots of these variables, as we think about the tool, the first version came from an expert, right? But we need to think about how we will scale the tool going forward and how we bring the community, how we bring people who deliver certain components so that it helps them, the tool helps, their contributions can be seen in a tool. Let's say using fluid from vendor A, here is the value. I'm using or some certain other element from vendor B, here is the value. So we will be, we even during this summit had some really good conversations to how we can make this tool scalable so that it becomes behaving like a Wikipedia going forward. Right, so it's like a win-win between the industry and this tool that hopefully represents the industry. Okay. All right. In terms of there is no point to go over the too much details, but just I'd like to mention the approach that is taken into the tool. An approach is really to focus on something that is common between those apples and oranges, right? And the common piece is really we really like the apple, right? We like the apple, right? So we call it, we use a couple of terms here. One is the digital capacity, and another is IT power. But basically, it's the power used by electronics to produce useful results. Everything else is the overhead. So we try to focus on that IT power. We remove the fans, power associated with fans, and we temporarily remove power associated with power supplies. Why temporarily? Because eventually we'll need to re-add it back on the immersion side, but now without the fans. Okay. So basically, in the way it works, you go from, let's say, air-cooled, you have a bunch of you punch in some of your, couple of variables from the top, and then it basically deducts the apple, if you will, right? It takes the, strips out all the overhead and say, hey, what is my apple? Why I'm having this facility? This is the key, information power or digital capacity, if you will, that will be common as you move from air to immersion. And then, don't read, please. It's too small font. But the idea is basically, as you can see, I'm highlighting this line where the IT power is now, deducted from air-cooled environment and now moved over to the immersion cooling environment, right? And then immersion cooling, whole facility is being modeled on the right side. Is it the right way to do it? I don't know. It's a way to do it. We are, this is how it is right now. We will open additional contributions. Once we done with the first version, we'll open additional contributions. We'll have additional ideas. Even now, we have some additional ideas. Creativity keep on going. So it's a process. So yeah, just very quickly, you will see the energy, floor space, cooling infrastructure, power and data infrastructure, details about racks and tanks and so on. So what are we planning to do toward second version? We're planning to add TCO for a cold plate, right? We are planning to add TCO for brownfield deployments. Essentially retrofit of air-cooled facility for, I don't know, somebody will having a lot of air-cooled stuff, but the new GPUs are coming just in liquid-cooled form factor. What do you do? Broader range of climate options. We really like the way Green Grid have a very fancy way of, essentially punching your zip code and you can get your details, right? So it's something a little bit more elaborate, maybe not as much, but it's a good idea. Pre-populating some of the energy costs for US, Canada, Western Europe, and so on. There are some additional nuances actually associated with liquid cooling that we currently don't model. For example, if it's not just immersion, it's also for a cold plate as well. Your T-junction, temperature junction of your silicon is actually lower. There is a potential to be lower, and that would result in lower leakage of the components, which will bring power down. power of the components will go down because of the lower temperature, because of the lower leakage. So that's an interesting one. And I mentioned all the scale and bringing, community and everything. I'm not going to repeat myself. So that's the overview.
Yeah, come join us. We covet your input. We really do, because it takes a village. And again, we kind of spent a lot of time in the weeds. Now we're doing the fun stuff, guys. So really, truly, for this to be what the definition of OCP is, which is what I love, we've all seen versions of a TCO. Everyone has one. But the difference in what we're doing is we're all joining together, all the technology teams, providers. We need some infrastructure specialists as well. And we need to all work together to create this, again, agnostic picture for the end user to really see the numbers and really understand what they're looking at. There's a plethora of variables, and there's a lot of things that we need to have, do. We're excited about Rev 1. We're going to push it out by the end of Q4, so pray for us. And we've been so much thanks to everyone like Rolf and Jack and people that have participated, but we love to have more. We got a lot of great ideas, co-location, TCOs, and everything, so I think we're good. Is there any questions? Hey, we got 2 minutes for questions.
Yes, I have a question. So, all the businesses is based on 3 pillars: financial, environmental, and social. So you touch the first one, financial, which makes sense for all businesses, and that's interesting, drive that. But there is 2 big elephants in the room, like environmental and social, and immersion cooling perfectly cover that from point of view of decarbonization and heat reuse. So my question is that do you plan to also evaluate this part, these pillars, environmental, embodied carbon, etc., and social, which bring benefits like lower noise of that center, more dense, and ability to heat reuse?
Absolutely, and great question. 100%. That is really one of our goals. But you know what they say? You have to eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So this is our elephant, and we're trying to get to this Rev 1. And I know you're very busy, but we would love, we know you're an expert in the heat reuse. And that's actually on our existing spreadsheet now, is because that's huge. This is a huge point for immersion as well, so.
And thank you for your question. One thing to add, I just realized that I forgot to put that for F2, because we did talk about in our call, so we did talk about adding CO2 savings and how much I was saving, really helping environment. In fact, in Intel, we do have some data points on that. We just didn't. We will need to add it to the tool. Yeah.
We have one more question. Gosh, we got time. We're good. Or do we, or don't we? Maybe? Oh, no, we're done. Sorry. If you guys hit us up later, email either one of us, our OC project emails. Thank you so much.